Topping today's news, the new umbrella union protest outside the House of Assembly over stalled negotiations. The government reacts to grocers who are allegedly refusing to implement new pricing controls. The environment minister gives an update on how the government is dealing with the issue of pollution from cruise ships. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Dorino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. That is the sound of dozens of Bahamas National Alliance Trade Union Congress, or BNATUC members, along with their leaders, Kingsley Ferguson and Belinda Wilson, as they gathered outside the House of Assembly this morning to protest the halt of negotiations for their industrial agreements. After being stopped on the steps of Parliament by the union leaders, Acting Prime Minister Chester Cooper spoke with both Mr. Ferguson and Mrs. Wilson. And what started out as a civil conversation to discuss challenges both unions are facing quickly became a heated discourse as union leaders sought to get their points across.
We would express in a vehement way that we would never given an opportunity to sit and discuss these agreements. However, the government of the Bahamas, the Minister of the Public Service, the acting minister in her absence, Mr. Lightbourne, indicated that the government's intention was to get funding in the hands of the workers of this country for the holiday.
I think that's
okay. Hold on.
Not meet
Hold on.
the payroll.
Minister, if it indeed was the case and the intent was to ensure that that happens, it could not happen in the absence of the union other than if the government intended to practice union busting.
Mr. Ferguson says several attempts have been made to contact Prime Minister Philip Davis to discuss a plethora of issues, including salary increases and claims of union busting, but to no avail. The BPSU president says he is very disappointed with the government's response to their concerns.
We are disappointed that the integrity of the leaders of this country has been presented to Bahamian persons or Bahamian people for their scrutiny. Because when persons are being provided with information that is inaccurate and it can be substantiated that is inaccurate by their own volition, it is cause for concern in this country. It is a serious cause for concern when there is no integrity in the leadership of the country. And I stand by that in a very, very serious way. And so this morning, we are very, very, very disappointed in the response of the government of the Bahamas, in the absence of the fact that there's nobody to speak here for the public servants in this honorable house, and the information that has been disseminated today, it's information that is incorrect.
Acting Prime Minister Cooper sought to scold the unionists for their assembling out in the streets, as he believes it is not the appropriate way to conduct conversations with government officials. However, he assured the unions that once Minister of State for Public Service Cleo Governor returns in country, all documents will be revisited.
You asked me a question, though. Let me answer it. Let me answer that so I could go into the house. You asked me when you could sign. The Minister Mitchell, has indicated to me that the documentation is being cleaned up. All elements are agreed, and he's back in the country on the 14th. And I assume that once he returns to the country, that you can schedule a signing with him.
That's not good enough.
Hold on, Madam President.
That's not good enough.
So with that said, I don't see,
Madam President,
I don't see an issue.
Minister,
now, when the documents are cleaned up, they will undertake to get them to you. Minister, let me finish, please. Finish. Minister Roll is out of the country. She's returning, I believe, on Monday or Tuesday. And when she returns, she will make preparation in Minister Mitchell's absence to ensure that what needs to happen.
Following the conversation with the acting Prime Minister, Mr. Ferguson told reporters that he was not satisfied with the response and advised union members that whatever action needs to be taken to get the attention of the government will be taken, and that includes a disruption in services across the public sector. Leader of the opposition, Michael Pintard, cracking down on the Davis administration today in wake of outcries by the Bahamas National Alliance Trade Union Congress, or the BNATUC members. Mr. Pintard declared the party's support for the unions at a press conference outside the Ministry of Works this morning as he spoke to reporters, claiming that the government has been misleading the public on this matter. His comments follow the leadership of the BNATUC encouraging their members to take their concerns to Parliament.
We asked on our feet in the House of Assembly, we asked the Minister with responsibility for social services, the Honorable Obadiah Wilstrom. We asked him what was the nature of the issues. We then suggested him quietly. He said there are persons in the ministry who have represented that you are bringing in others who don't have a history or the knowledge, in-depth knowledge of what is happening in social services and what the needs are of the community that social services services, and yet you want to promote them over persons who have institutional memory, long-standing relationships, are part of a broader network.
The opposition leader says the Minister of Social Services, Obi Wilstrom, claimed that the matter is a long-standing problem spanning multiple administrations. But according to findings of the opposition, that is not the case.
Is that for the last 10 months, they have made representation to him. He's made a commitment to get back to them, has not done so in a timely fashion. Instead, they're spending more time trying to determine who's loyal to them as politicians, even though the election is over. And therefore, they have very little time to make sure that they take care of the needs of the workers at the Ministry for Social Services or take care of the people that the workers serve.
Mr. Pintard reiterated the opposition's support for the union and encourages the union to put pressure on the government to be transparent in their communications and actions. Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson slams Minister of Labor Keith Bell for his response, saying he is not concerned with the rhetoric being spread about unions' negotiations for public servant salary increases. Mrs. Wilson says it is Mr. Bell that needs to cut down on the rhetoric.
We had the press conference, and the following day, I, along with my Secretary General for the BNATUC, Teresa Mortimer, we had a brief meeting with the minister, and we raised the issues for the BPSU, and we impressed upon the minister that it is important that his colleagues provide for the BPSU the 5 industrial agreement for them to review, for consideration for them to sign. And if the information I got from Friday to today, I was also able, along with Teresa Mortimer, to speak with the lead negotiator who is for the government for the BPSU. And so we had 2 meetings, and according to the information I received today, one of those industrial agreements are supposed to be signed today.
Mrs. Wilson says there are 5 outstanding industrial agreements waiting to be signed.
So there are 5 agreements that the BPSU has, which is 1 for the public service generally, 2 the airport authority, 3 the University of the Bahamas, 4 the Bahamas, the public hospital authorities, and the 5th one is the antiquities and monuments. So there are 5 industrial agreements that Kingsley Ferguson, the president of the BPSU, was waiting to sign. So that press conference was called since that myself, along with Teresa Mortimer, we've had a meeting with the Minister of Labor, Minister Keith Bell, and we've had a meeting with the lead negotiator for the government who's negotiating with the BPSU.
Following that press conference, BPSU President Kingsley Ferguson called for an emergency meeting of its members at the union's headquarters on East Street South. That was Tuesday evening, to discuss the way forward following the stalling of the government on the union's industrial agreement. That meeting resulted in the protest at the House of Assembly today. We are a country of laws, and the government is prepared to fight to ensure that grocery store owners comply with the new price control changes implemented by the Davis administration in October this year. Prime Minister Philip Davis telling a large crowd gathered on Christie Park as much on Tuesday evening. They were gathered for the Urban Renewal Christmas tree lighting ceremony. The Prime Minister listed several things that the government can do to help the public in the midst of rising inflation.
War in Ukraine, a disruption in supply after pandemic, all that has hurt us. The rising cost of fuel, we don't produce fuel, we buy it. And so all those things, but what we can do, we can lower import duty on food. We did that. We did that. We can hire more inspectors to go in these stores to make sure that the cost of food and the cost of the lowering of custom duty is passed on to you. And we are going to insist that they obey the law.
And finally, in this segment, internationally, as the world still grapples with inflation and looming recession, the government, in an attempt to ease such economic circumstances for the holiday season and bring relief to the Bahamian people, they have attempted to amend price margins in food stores. However, those in the retail grocery industry are pushing back. Cale Campbell reports on the latest in this dispute between the government and the retail grocery stakeholders.
There are no negotiations that will hold up price control amendments which were implemented October 17th. This, according to Minister of Economic Affairs Michael Halkitis, who gives some details on discussions held between government and retail grocer stakeholders. Since the government announced the 38 items added to the price control margins list, there has been much ire of stakeholders in the retail grocery industry, to which Minister Halkitis says he's aware of comments made by some grocery store operators.
They expressed some concerns. We went back and we made some adjustments. We increased some margins to account for perishables and to account for family island transportation. We thought that was a reasonable concession to some of the concerns that they raised. And so, for all intents and purposes, the amendments are in place and we expect them to be respected. We expect them to be respected. There was a concern raised about, the issue of changing all of the prices, and what we said to them was, if it's a difficulty changing them individually, we would allow you to have the price on the shelf until such time as all the prices can be changed individually. And so, for all intents and purposes, the amendments are in place, and we expect them to be respected.
The minister further revealed that instruction has been given to price control inspectors to, once again, make a check at the various grocery stores for non-compliance of the law. He further revealed that the ministry has hired more inspectors in New Providence since price control amendments came into effect, with an ongoing process currently to hire inspectors for the Family Islands.
So far, the reports that we have been getting from our inspectors are by and large the new margins are being respected. But in light of what we saw being attributed to some operators today, I have given instructions that the inspectors are to go out today to double check. All right. So we fully expect and we fully intend to enforce the law. I would say that, as I said, our reports have been that the margins are being respected, but we have some comments being attributed to two particular operators today.
When asked about potential penalties for non-compliance by grocers, Minister Halkitis says an investigation will be initiated upon suspicion of non-compliance, adding that penalties for failure to cooperate in an investigation by providing requested documentation and refusing to appear before Price Control Commission may result in a fine not exceeding $2,500 or imprisonment up to 6 months, with conviction $5,000 or 12 months imprisonment, and extends in the case of corporate entities to directors.
In putting in the new amendments, we understand that there are adjustments, and we thought that we were quite reasonable in allowing some concessions and agreeing to some concessions in terms of the margin and in terms of the implementation time. And so what we have done is we have sought to be reasonable and lenient when it comes to that transition. Notwithstanding, you have some operators who say they can change the prices with the flip of the switch. Not all can do that, and so we sought to be reasonable and lenient in terms of allowing a transition period. But what we cannot abide is an outright defiance and an assertion that they will not comply with the law. We cannot abide that. There are laws. The inspectors are out today. If you go out to the stores right now, you might see some inspectors out. So we fully intend to enforce the regulations.
The Economics Affairs Minister, wanting full clarity, explained that the government is not asking for retail grocers to sell at a loss, but it is understood that a cost is established, then there is a margin on top of costs, which the government feels is reasonable. For Jcn News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Thanks for that report, Cale. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks.